Alright guys, well we're back out here at the layout and we're going to start doing some more work on these modules here. We're continuing to work technically northward, but in real life we're going east here. So we've completed this module towards the west behind the camera here, and we're going to continue on this way. We pretty much have an entire idea of what we need to do back here. I've studied this whole area quite a bit like before for the opposite module, so I know exactly what I want in this area. However, we do got to modify the track a little bit more before we can continue, before we do any kind of ballasting or anything like that. And what this is going to require is for us to go in here and change these switches in the back here. As I talked about previously in some update videos, when I originally popped in the center siding crossovers, I placed them a little too far back. These need to be basically about a foot forward. So what I'm going to have to do is cut out the sections of track. I'll save what I can, and then I'll be able to obviously save these switches, because these have never been glued in. These are all loose for a particular reason. I was doing this in the event that I had to modify something, so on my end I did the smart thing. I was not smart on the opposite module the first time I had to modify the crossover, because I glued all those switches in and had to rip them back up and ended up damaging them and throwing them away. So I did the smart thing here in this case. Kept these unglued so they're nice and loose. All I have to do is pop up the flex track around them and then basically lift this section of track out. The first thing we got to do before we can continue on though is go ahead and remove the track feeders from the track. These will get reused. We don't need to reposition them for any reason. These are all drilled and set in place. So we don't need to do anything to these. The trick here is that the outer track here, the feeder is on the inside of the rail because there's a 2x4 that runs the length of the bench work, and I can't thus run a wire near that because I don't feel like drilling through a 2x4. So that'll be the trick, but we only got to do it 2 times, so it shouldn't be a huge deal. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to start warming up this feeder, and then we're going to pull it off. There we go. Doesn't take much. All you got to do is warm it and they lift right off. Once your gun gets hot and you have it set, then you can just take off with this. I had to wait a minute because mine isn't a set gun. I have to wait for the temperature to come up on it. But once it's at that temperature, you can just quickly zap these. And that solder comes up real easy. One more. This is the inner rail here. The one on the outside. This one's going to be a little bit trickier. There we go. With the track repaired, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and we're going to see how easy this is to lift off. Now unfortunately I used latex caulk to glue these tracks down, so there's going to be a very slim chance of me actually being able to save these tracks, because once you start prying these ties up, the rails pop up and bend out of shape and you can't pop them back down. So in most cases you're pretty much sacrificing the track to have to dig it all back up and remove it. I'm going to make a cut here so I can pull the track away from the good joint, the good track that I want to save. I'll just be able to remove that and pull it away from the connectors. Let's see, we need to come in right there. Make a cut. There we go. Okay. And now we'll try to lift it up right at the cut so we have a starting point. We'll come in like this, and then we can come in, we'll start relatively easily. We'll be able to start lifting all this up, and then we'll just be able to go down like this. I'll look for track spikes too. Those are going to be areas that are going to be a little bit more of a bear, especially if you used glue. Those are going to be a little bit harder. Okay, so here's all the good road bed that we should be able to reuse if I can sand this down. All this up here is where the turnout was. So we're going to relocate all this up to here. So we'll have to lay in a new section of road bed. We're going to have to clean up all this caulk here. You can see all that. It has quite a texture to it, and the problem is if you lay new track over that, all the spacing is going to be weird, so the track's going to be raised up and we're going to have a real weird lump in the roadbed where it meets. And I want to have every joint as level as absolutely possible. So what we're going to have to do is come in here and we're just going to have to clean up these joints. There you can see where I cut the rail out, and there we have a good joint that we can connect back into. So we'll be able to pull these joiners out and set these aside for now, like I am doing. There we go. There's a tie we'll have to pull up, and then there's another joiner. No big deal there, just lift that up. Okay, so that's what we need to do. You can see there's a good joint where it overlaps, and then we'll just sand all this down and get it ready for new roadbed and new track. Alright, so I ended up deciding just to rip all the new roadbed out so I could level it with fresh roadbed. This would make my job a little bit easier instead of trying to sand and then raise certain portions of the roadbed. So what I've done is I've cut a sheet of cork out to match the roadbed along here where the gradient is pretty much the same between the ties. Leading up to where the tracks switch back over into 3-track and then back to 2, I'll have cork roadbed leading up to this sheet here, the way I've cut it out. It's very important when you're going to do any kind of track work like this and you're trying to re-level things back out that you get this as flat as possible. So when you're going to glue down a large sheet of cork like this, make sure every corner of this is completely secured down, and then lay a lot of weight on this so it's as flat as possible. That's extremely important. I'm going to do a little bit more sanding underneath the sheet as well. I'm going to try to true all this up as much as possible. I got it pretty smooth at this point, but there's still a couple rough chunks like in this area here that I can kind of blend out a little bit more. And then obviously I'm making sure all the feeder wires are tucked down. I'll just drill new holes for them when the time comes, so that won't be an issue there. So here's what I've done to prepare for the new track. I'm going to have to raise these sections up here to put styrene inserts to line these up with the roadbed here. I'm going to have to raise these tracks anyway, and that was initially what I was going to have to do. Notice how I had to do this with these tracks here in the yard to level them with styrene. So I'm going to have to do this exact process on this side too. Not so much on these tracks here. It's only going to be on this side, fortunately, because these are not too bad out of the gate on this side. But the switches are temporarily laid there to give me a turnout, the idea of where the turnout needs to go, and here I've laid cork strips in to meet the cork pad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay in some weight over this and let it dry overnight, and then Friday night I'll come back out and inspect it and see if I need to fix anything. It's now the next day and everything is dried nice and flush. It is perfect. Everything's nice and level. You can see the glue is still setting up just a little bit here, so I am gonna keep the weights at least on this section. This section of cork over here is pretty dry, so I'm gonna say that it's probably okay to leave it. I might still throw some of my ballast containers on top of it just to let it set, but this will definitely need to keep some weight on. And over on this corner, this is pretty good, but I want you guys to see this here. So there's going to be the thing that we're going to have to compensate for, and it's going to have to be maintaining a slight gradient to this track going this way. We're going to have to raise it up just like what we did on these tracks where the new cork runs across. We have to adjust that height, being that these benches have all raised up over time. They've lifted up a little bit, so we're going to have to try to adjust that and fix that. So that's not a huge deal, but I am going to have to probably try to pick up some more styrene sheets, because at this point this is all the 040 that I have left. I've really burned through it, obviously, being that I've had quite a few sections to have to adjust, especially making the inclines and slight gradients with the switches to have nice even transitions between the tracks. That's really eaten up a lot of my styrene supply, so I'm going to have to get some new sheets to finish this. But I'll come back tonight and hopefully be able to start laying some track in. And I won't show that entire process. I'll just lay the track in, and by the time the next shot comes around here, you guys will see a completed scene with track. Okay, since the last clip, the track has been polished and cleaned off. All the ballast is set in place nice and hard, rock hard. The switch points are all cleared off, which is nice. Everything's painted. The spur track is prepped. I actually glued down a lot of the spilled garbage from the trash cars back here in the yard. And then through the little alley here, I just tried to blend in a little bit of dirt, a little bit of static grass. I tried to kind of blend in the scene where it transitions. And then you can see I very cleverly covered up these joints and blended everything together. So where I'm going to be starting off with the detailed scenery is in this corner here. And as you can see, I've already planted my shrubs and bushes in place to get this prepped. All the tall grass has been planted. And I'm already prepping up the scene to get ready to install the signal bridge, as you can see. So I got this little buildup of rock through the ballast into the grass. This is not the exact positioning of the relay cabinet. I just put this here to get a rough position. But going to Fostoria recently, I figured out the positioning of the signal bridge. It's essentially going to go right over in here. So it's going to be right there. And then there's going to be some speed limit signs planted here and here. And then I'll have to get the switch motors installed. There's one for each of these switches, obviously. And then I'm going to have to build another switch stand for this turnout here. So I'm currently in the process of building all of the little detail parts like new relay cabinets, track equipment and things like that right now. So I'm in the process of doing all that. All the track work, like I said, is finished, which is a really good sign. A lot of good progress there. We're ready to start filling this in, and then I need to also order some more ties, start laying ties and debris in here, and then lay in some rail. And I do have a large portion of rail that I just prepped out, as you can see. One of the benefits of having a lot of scrap track is a lot of this rail I can cut up into various sections, and then I can be able to move it around, sort of like what I did over here. In this rail yard over here, there's a lot of little sections of rail and things like that standing by, ready to go in this little maintenance of weight apartment area. So it's the same story in this yard here. There's just going to be stuff like that stored, and then there's going to be a utility pole right here, another utility pole, or probably just going to branch off, sort of like what I did here, where you have the actual pole to represent what's supposed to be there, and then it just runs over into the wall like this with these two lines. I'll probably just honestly do something like that again. So I have to build the pole, which is going to be a really large pole. I'm going to have to scratch build that, which is fun. At least I only have to build one. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to be planting a lot of tall yellow grass in here, burnt shrubs, things like that, and then all this will be trees and bushes. Now, in terms of trees, I finally located some more Scenic Express trees. I ended up ordering 2 packs from a place called Mainline Hobby Supply in Pennsylvania. They still have 2 cases of Scenic Express trees in stock. I know that a lot of people are looking for them right now since they're out of stock. So if you guys are interested in getting some of those right now, hit them up. But there is another delivery on the way. So hopefully like the end of November here, they'll have them back in stock. But I couldn't wait. I wanted to get this project wrapped up. I also did plant some of the static grass in between the tracks here, but at this point it's mostly just going to be cleaner ballast. This is the heavily used portion of the yard, so they're a little bit better on the upkeep and maintenance. This is still all jointed rail, it's still crappy track, but there's not as many weeds as say in areas like this where there's not as much foot traffic and things like that, and there's not a lot of maintenance. This is just a car storage area back here, so most of the time these tracks really aren't getting used, at least in this section. So I'm not going to be worried too much about that. I do really like the look of that static grass growing between the ties. It's really tedious to do. And I have that section back there, but I'm not going to be doing any more up through here. It's all just going to be ballasted track, so that'll make my life a little bit simpler because, like I said, this is a little bit more tedious to go in there and lay in. Let me see, what else do I got in here? Okay. Don't know why that broke off. That's kind of annoying. I'll have to repair that. Something bumped into it. It must have been when I was planting the shrubs. But yeah, anyways, I got the shrubs planted. I'll be able to do a little bit more brush along the track, clean that up, and then I'll install the signal bridge and some other little details, and I'll come back and show you guys that progress. All this is going to be exactly like it is. I'm not doing anything else to this. This is pretty much done. There'll just be some little piles of junk and assorted little details along this section here. But other than that, not too much. And then right in this corner, there'll be a pile of ballast as a track block for the end of the rip track there. Let me see what else. Still some other little things to do. Like I got to clean out these little points here. As you can see, got to clean out those switch points, or the little frog point there. Not the frog point, but you know what I mean. Clean that stuff out, and then I'm going to run the Dremel on the sides of the track to clean all this ballast that's stuck to the sides of the rail, because obviously ballast doesn't float and stick to metal. Now that I'm satisfied with the ballast and the track work, I'm ready to go ahead and start adding more of the details. And as you can see, we have the signal bridge propped up and ready to be glued in place. I've made a little slope out of the ballast to prepare this for permanent installation. I have most of the bushwork done, though I do have some more scenery features coming in. I got to plant some more tall weeds along this right of way, but I'm going to wait until I have my poles in place. Speaking of detail parts, I also made a batch of parts for this particular modular scene. I made some more relay cabinets. There you can see this one has the milepost number on there, 264.1. I got a couple older cabinets, speed signs, piping for the conduit posts that are usually accompanied with signal bridges. I got switch motors, pull stubs, switch stands, scratch built. I made another batch of these, and then I got all the utility telegraph poles, the abandoned telegraph poles, finished up. So those are all the details that I'm going to be installing. So it's going to just be a matter now of going in the scene and planting all of these details in their proper positions. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that now. First things first, I'm going to glue the signal bridge in place. That's going to be really important to get that installed. And then I'm going to start adding the ballast around the base to get that permanently in place. So guys, check this product out. I was watching a video the other Sunday by Seaboard Central on YouTube, and he was demonstrating a product I had never heard of by Martin Wahlberg Studios, or Wahlberg, excuse me. And it's a tall grass like this, as you can see. Look at the texture and the realism on this. It's insane. And it's exactly what I've been wanting to use back in this area over here. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start planting more of these bushes and shrubs and things like that along the right-of-way, and then I'm going to come back in. I'm going to start using some of this Wahlberg Studio tall grass. And I got 3 packages of these. I got them from Scenic Express, and they're actually relatively cheap too, so I'm actually very happy about that. But these look really cool. It's just really neat to see the kind of products you can find in this hobby these days. So while we're on the subject, you know, because this is a learning experience, this is something as of a few days ago I didn't know existed. And for anyone who is not familiar with this product, I'll show you guys basically how it works. It comes on a large pad like this, as you can see. And all you got to do is take the pad, choose a section of material you want to pull off like this, rip it from the backing, and then very carefully you can take it to your layout like this and plant it essentially just like that, and it gives you this really realistic looking patch of grass along that right-of-way. It looks very consistent to what's really there in the real C&O yard, and it just looks super realistic. I do like the combination of the Scenic Express bushes, things like that, but these just have such a high level of detail, and it's just effortless. I mean, look at this. I can just sit here and keep adding shrubs and bushes to this as much as I want. I can just keep building onto this, just coming in here with little bits at a time. I would recommend white glue, obviously, to glue these down. I will show you guys how I'm actually going to do that here in just a second, but I'm just going to try to fill in the seam first. I'm just going to keep grabbing little bits of these sections of tall grass. I'm going to kind of try to blend it in with what's already there, because I don't want everything to look really weird. So the idea with nature is you have a random effect, but in scale form, when you just have random patches of bright and dark green colors, sometimes it doesn't scale down very well. So it is a good idea to be kind of careful about blending scenery together. You have to do a little bit more thought, if you will, when you try to do that. But if you're careful, you can blend things together very easily. So just like that, within a matter of minutes, we have a very convincing looking scene. And in terms of gluing this down, all we got to do is come in here with some white glue. And I'm just going to start gluing this in, just like this. And that should hold in place very nicely. Like that back there a little bit. That does look nice. Yeah. And then I'll also come in here. I'm going to spray a little of that glue off the tops of those. Just a little bit. Help that glue saturate a little bit. This is just straight water. No alcohol or anything like that. There we go. And that should do a very nice job. So I took another break and are returning back to the issue of signals. I discussed that I was going to be modeling the newer signals that are in place here in the yard. I decided to change my mind. For the signal bridge, right now I have the new bridge installed. I did discover that there is a kit available for a 3 target CNO cantilever available from Alchem Scale Models. It's a relatively affordable kit, and I did find some signal heads that I can source. I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I am going to worry about is these guys. There's a 3/2 signal, and then there's a 3/3 over here. If I jump over to this opposite photo, you can see the 3/2 next to the yard, and then over here you have the 3/3 positioned here. I want to model these signals because these are 2 signals that I had modeled initially on my first replica of the Sienna yard. I really like the look of these old signals, and I wanted that piece of history encapsulated in the scene. And when it comes to modeling, we should be able to model what we want. And I know it's not technically correct having the mismatched signals, but there's a possibility that I might go ahead and change the signal bridge out altogether down the road when time and money allows and when the motivation is there. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to model these 2 signals instead, because they're an important part of the CNO yard. So, coming to the models themselves, this is what I came up with. These are Oregon Rail Supply signals. I scratch built the masts, ladders, and walkways, and then the little junction box there. I modified the masts and then mounted the signal heads to these. So you can see you have the 3/3, and then you have the 3/2. I painted them silver, weathered them with an airbrush, and then also did some oil work so they're nice and rusty. Obviously they're not lit, and the way I've modeled these is I have these nice long brass bases, so I'll be able to actually glue these into the scenery by drilling a hole into the ballast, inserting them, and then routing the ballast off around that little base. So these should make some great signals for the scene. So this is why you need to stop, take breaks, because this allows you to go back and rethink things, because model railroading needs to be fun. You should be able to model the things that you want. And I'm very happy I chose to do this. Like I said, I'm still on the fence about actually modeling the CNO cantilever here, but it's there with the old code line. It's just an iconic look for this area, and I would like to model it. So I am very, very highly considering it. Since I know that the parts are available, it is something I can model, but we'll come back to it. Okay, next big update here. So far I've come out and I've started wiring up the poles with my Berkshire Products Easy line. You can see I ran the first telegraph line all the way down our telegraph section, all the way across. So I got all that wired up, and I'm going to probably do a second line, since there's 2 main lines on this telegraph line here. So I'll probably do another one of those if I have enough line. If not, I'll have to go and buy some more. What I did this morning was I got up and I made some more trees. So I planted some little trees growing in between some of the foliage here. Kind of blended that out and filled it out a little bit more, as you can see. So that looks really nice. All that is there in real life, according to the old prototype photos that I have. I remember one of the main photos I'm using would be positioned kind of about here, maybe more, somewhere in this area, and you can actually see those trees. But when they did a lot of the foliage work and they actually cut down the poles, these trees were also removed, leaving only the underbrush. So that's a whole scene that I'm modeling backdated, obviously. Here in the yard section, I've also installed the first signal. This is a scratch built, the one I showed earlier. So this is in its final position next to the switch stand, and I also have the speed limit signs in place as well. So that's another big step there. You can see the other speed limit signs right across. Here in the front portion of the yard, I'm getting ready to lay out some rails, spare sections of rail. I also have tie piles lying here. Now the next big thing I did was, in preparation for trees, I went in and laid in more of the bushes, tall bushes. I laid in more of the scenic grass here, the tall grass leading up into those bushes. Then I also took some more of my Scenic Express tree material, and I broke a lot of this up and glued it in place to model some more shrubs and things running along this maintenance of way alley here. So as you look at this, you can see how detailed this whole scene actually is. All this junk buried in the weeds. You can really see what I was trying to go for here. This is just like the real CNO yard. Lots of old ties, decrepit old rail sections that have been laying here for years. It's all this, just like this. So I've really modeled that successfully here, and I'm really happy with how that's turned out. And moving into the next part here, I have some trees prepared. These are the next round of Scenic Express trees that I've added the foliage material to, and I've prepped, so they're all painted and ready to go, as you can see. So these are all pretty much ready for planting, and tomorrow I'm going to hopefully get up, Friday, and I'm going to hopefully have enough trees to be able to fill in this scene. Hopefully. Some other things I got to do out here last minute, some more little scenery touches, some more little shrubs and things like that, filling in some sections. I got to run 2 more lines on these poles, so one telegraph line, and then there's a cable line that runs underneath these as well that I got to try to see if I can model. So I'm going to also do that as well. So I got to put all that in. And then I got to do some more detailing around this scene here, more detailing along this yard track here. There'll be a little rock pile here, a little area for tie plates, for example, stuff like that I still got to work on, but it's all really coming along now. It's really starting to look like a completed scene. So hopefully in the next shot here, this will all be complete, and we'll be looking at a finished module that we can go ahead and knock off the list. Well guys, this one's been a long one, but we're finally at a point where we've completed the scene, mostly. Other than some small final little details, everything else is solidly in place. All the track is prepped. We're ready to go in and add some little details. And as you can see, coming into the yard scene here, little details that I have added so far, being that this is a maintenance of way alley, there's a lot of sectional rail and different little components, little pallets, cross ties, lots of junk, road-related junk that gets accumulated in areas like this, and this yard is full of this kind of stuff. So I've gone in and added little tie piles. You can see I've added little piles of debris, rail sections that I've cut and painted, and you can see I've glued down sections of rail along the rip track here, the dead end track, to kind of make this look a little bit more realistic. Other than actual track cleaning and things like that, I'm not going to be doing too much else to this. I like the rusty brown to the tops of the rails on this rip track. On these tracks, these will have to be cleaned because obviously these are the ones that are getting used regularly. I really love how the signals turned out. In combination with the maintenance of way signs and things like that, that was a good decision. At ground level, all this looks really nice. You can see it's very prototypical. When you're down at ground level, you can see all these nice details. Bushes, shrubs, trees, all that good stuff. Switch motors, just like the real CNO yard. The look of the signal bridge guarding that south side of the yard is amazing. I really love that. That's incredible. And as you look down this edge of the alley, you can see you lead into that maintenance of way alley there with all the bushes and shrubs. And looking at all the shrubs on this end, those are all nicely tied together. I got all the utility poles done. I wired a large fiber optic cable underneath the poles using this interesting product that I discovered. This is necklace cord. I ordered some of this on Amazon. I had it in 2 days, and I actually wired it up to the poles to make it look like the large fiber optic cable that runs underneath for the signal system. That was there in the real C&O yard on the poles that was equipped to all that. So I wanted to add that. As you can see, I did. And that all came out really good. It all runs all the way down here to the stopping point. Now, the alley was the big tie-in scene, and as you can see, we've done a lot of bush and shrub detail along this little area. And as you can see, you got all your little tie piles, lots of little shrubs, weeds, and bushes, kind of growing through all of that, all of this junk that likely won't get reclaimed. Old rails, things like that. It's all being swallowed up by nature, as you can see. And this is a combination of the Scenic Express trees, bushes, and then the miniature little bushes, the tall grass that I have here. This has really played a nice part. I love the color. It all blends in very nicely together, and as you look down this alley, it's just very realistic to what's there. In hindsight, I should have added some puddles, because this is a very pothole, wasted looking road full of water. So I should have added some water in hindsight, but I do like the way it looks. It conveys what's supposed to be there. I love the look of being able to come down this alley. As you look down it, you can just see kind of like all the junk and the trees. It's very prototypical to the real C&O yard. It's pretty much exactly what's there. I did support this pole. You can see I was able to adjust and reposition this by adding a brace to it, just like in real life. So my pole's braced and installed. Speaking of poles, there is a large electrical pole that's positioned here and then runs across the track. I got to think if I want to install that or not, or build that. I'd only have to build one, but it'd be a heck of a lot of work for one pole. So I got to think if I even want to model that, but I'm trying to model as much as I can that's actually back here in the real yard. So it is up for consideration. So like I said, this scene and pretty much all the other scenes on this layout are never quite actually finished. No model road is complete. There's always something else you can do. There's always some more grass you could add. There's always some more shrubs or people or vehicles you can add. So it's going to be a work in progress for sure. And moving forward, we're going to be prepping up this module next. I'm going to have to move and clean up everything. But I'm going to have a good long cleaning session out here because, as you can see, I've accumulated quite a bit of junk. Got a lot of trash to take out. I got to get these floors swept too. So I'm going to be doing a process of cleaning for the next couple weeks, organizing things, and then hopefully I'll be able to move into this next module. And this is going to be another very important module that I'm going to be tying things together, and this is going to really start tying up this yard scene here, especially this, and then further into this one. But with this one, I got to do a little bit more planning because I don't like how much open space there is here, because in real life there's nothing here, and there would be an overpass with, or rather an underpass. So I'm not really sure how I want to do this. This is kind of puzzling me at the moment. So I'm going to leave this as is, but in hindsight, I wish I would have planned this a little bit more different. We still got to change all this on this module here. You can see the height difference is just absolutely terrible now. We're going to absolutely have to fix this or completely replace it because it is not good. And all my new track work is already kinked up and damaged, so we're going to have to pull some ties up and readjust and realign the track, and then of course come back in here and we're going to have to repair all this again because the height has been horrible. This whole thing is bowed in, but like I said, these are all works in progress and I try not to get too overwhelmed. It's all stuff that gets done in time. Track work first, final adjustments, and then going in and adding all the fun details, ballasting and all that good stuff. It's one step at a time, and when you're doing a project like this, don't get overwhelmed. Don't try to do too much at a time. Just take on little sections at a time and you'll get it done. One other little detail, I did add the little shrubs and bushes between the tracks. You'll notice that. And then this third yard track also has these bushes too. So like I said, there's a lot of little fine details that you can just come in here and do. And this is the fun part of model railroading, is really being able to see your creative vision come to life. And I'm very happy with how this turned out. And I really thank you guys for following along on this. Hopefully this inspires you guys. And at the end of the day, it's entertaining for you guys too, because I do like sharing the ways I do stuff and sharing my techniques. So hopefully this can inspire you guys. And I'm always open to taking advice too. So I want to thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.